I was going to say I'm going to start this by a little bit of a surprise, but for you that have known me for a long time, it will be more like I'm going to start it with a shock. A shock. You're not going to expect this, because today, as we talk about the story of Jesus' birth, I'm going to start off with the story of Santa Claus and his birth. Where did he come from? The story of Santa Claus. Well, the story of Santa Claus, and I'll make all these little stories fast, but the story of Santa Claus starts with someone called Saint Nicholas. I know you've heard the name, but you might not understand what it is. And that's clear back in the 4th century. That's a long time ago. In the 4th century, Saint Nicholas, and he was, and for some still, he is the most loved saint, especially in history, especially in Europe. He was bigger than here, because that's where he started. His feast day was on December 6th. Big feast they'd have, and they remembered him after he died. And this all started because he got associated then with giving gifts. He was a very generous guy, okay? He was a generous saint. And he gave gifts especially to children. So now you can kind of see the roots, how this got started, okay? Germany picked it up heavily, and they called him another word you've probably heard during the season, Kris Kringle. Not Pringle, Kringle. And that name actually comes from the word Christ child. Kris Kringle, Christ child. But Kris Kringle in Germany, Kathy, was not associated with Santa Claus. They associated him with Jesus. Child, the child king, the Christ child, and that's pretty good. Over time, though, Kris Kringle then got associated, I don't know how, with St. Nicholas. They kind of got mixed together, I don't know how, but it did. And then in England, it evolved into Father Christmas. That we don't hear very much, but I have heard it before, Father Christmas, not too often. And at that point, Father Christmas started being a little less religious and more of just a winter celebration. So it was declining a little bit away from the religion and away from Jesus. Then the Dutch stepped in, and they brought us, I should have Jeremiah help me. He would know it easier. He would be able to say it in the correct accent. But anyway, it was Santa Claus. And that wasn't very good, but it's close. That's Dutch anyway. I know you're not Dutch, but you know a little of it. Santa Claus. And so the Dutch brought Santa Claus to America, where it phonically, now you get it. What do you think it turned into? Santa Claus turned into Santa Claus, and the Dutch brought it. At that point then, it started to drift a little more, and now it gets into a territory you understand. In 1823, Clark Moore wrote, "'Twas the night before Christmas." 1823. So we see how it evolved, and when this happened, everything changed. He's the one that introduced reindeer, chimney travel, Santa's jolly personality, and all that with his story. That's in 1823. Then somewhere 1860s into the 1880s, so during the Civil War period and a little after that, came a guy named Thomas Nast, and he began to draw pictures of Santa, what he imagined Santa as a round, bearded person who lived at the North Pole. And at that moment, Santa became absolutely Americanized in the culture, absolutely. Now there's one more step to go that turned the key to what we have today, and that's in the 1930s. Okay, so in the 1930s, a product company that you know decided they would grab hold of this and market their product with the Santa Claus thing. So guess who it was? Coca-Cola in 1930s did mass advertising, and this is where they gave Santa a jolly old man in a red suit with white trim. That was in the 1930s. Coca-Cola did that. And Santa then, because Coke was so big, Santa became a global icon, completely detached from Christianity, okay? But that's not how it started. But So we have to be careful that we don't go to the detached part, but it's also good to know the roots, how it started, okay? It just hasn't turned out so good. All right, so now, so now I want to get to the story of Christmas, but because I was able to give you some interesting facts about Santa Claus and how it originated, I thought I'd give you some interesting facts about Christmas. And I don't know how you feel about this. You have to be careful with me. When I told my daughter, I think it was yesterday, that I was going to do some Christmas Mythbusters. And she knows me well enough. She said, "Oh, Dad, please don't ruin Christmas for us." So if it's really sacred, if these facts are sacred to you, I'm sorry. But for me, I want to get the real setting. I don't mind all the stuff, but I want to get the real setting. I want to feel it. And the Bible story is meant to, if you can handle this term, to actually humanize the story of Jesus, because he came to represent God with us, humanity, right? He represents humanity. So that's why he was born and became a human being as God, right? So I'm just going to give you, it's not too much, but just a little bit. The first one will be a little shocking to you, because how many know, as my Bible says, Kathy, that they went to Bethlehem and there was no room where, Kathy? Oh, you're not Kathy. Kathy's sitting over here. But everybody knows it, right? Let's say it together. There was what? No room at the inn. And what does that mean to you? We'll leave the light on. Motel 6, right? Was full. Guess what, though? If you go and study the Greek language, it was not a hotel. Not a hotel, okay? The Greek word means guest room. It was not a public inn where just anybody could check in. And yet everybody checked in, and then, there's no room for him, so now he's gonna have to go to sleep with the animals. That's not what happened. The Greek word means guest room. So back then, most homes had at least 3 areas, okay? They had the main living area, and because of the Jewish culture was that you had to be able, if a stranger came to town, you had to have a place for them. So in most of the homes then would have had the main place where they live, and they would have had an area like a guest room, okay? A guest room. And then the third area of the home was where they kept the animals, and that was the lower level. So the main level, guest room, and basement, I guess, but the lower level, and that's where they kept all the animals, okay? So if you really study this and go back and study it accurately, which you don't have to, you can take my word for it or just throw it away and believe whatever you want, because this is not that important, but it's just wonderful to me to get just the real picture of what's going on. So most likely, as I studied it, Jesus was born in the home of his relatives, so that they would have been around to help in the lower area. That means exactly there was no room in the inn, meant there was no room in anybody's guest rooms anywhere. So the story still fits, right? There was no room, and he's still born in the lowly stable, but he was actually born in the lower area of a house, somebody's house, or probably some connection with a relative somehow. And the animals were there. It was an area made for the animals, okay? So it's still close. Well, there's a little bit difference because we make it more cozy than it really was, because Jesus, the story we know is Jesus was born in what? A wooden stable. And it's cozy, it's not too bad. I mean, we know it's a lowly stable and all that, but still the picture of the wood and the thatched roof and all that gives it a little bit warmer feeling than it really was. It was really more plain than that, because the houses then were not made of wood. Wood was very scarce. If you were very rich, or the king, or King Herod or somebody, the wood would go to that, maybe even go into the temple, right? So in that day, people built their houses out of stone. And so I like it, JJ, where you mentioned Jesus the carpenter, or Joseph the carpenter, but he was also a stone cutter, because most of the work that you could get was stone, not wood, because there wasn't that much wood to go around. I hope that doesn't, you don't have to go smash your nativity scene now because it's not biblical, but it was actually, Jesus would have been born in a stone stable. And the reason I'm mentioning that, it was actually more cold looking and more bare than we make it. We make it all the hay and the hay and all that stuff, and that and may have been around. But actually, he was born in a manger, but it would have been made out of stone. Okay, it was a stone feeding trough. That's even lower than the picture I had, right? Because that means they could have put him in there, and then the animals were actually eating around him. Because I didn't read it in the story where the animals were forced to go on a diet because the King of Kings was born. They want us to think very plain, very real. Life goes on. A baby's born. It's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And here they lay him in the trough, the animal trough that was actually probably made out of stone too. So bye-bye to the wooden manger, but you don't have to smash it. But anyway, stone troughs and used to feed them. And now, really, as he alluded to too, this is the really, really cool part about it, great part about it, the story, is most of us, and last week, Pastor J.D. King described the Christmas celebrations they had at his church, and when I was a kid, the same way. I'm positive, I don't have anybody to confirm this, but surely one of those years I was a shepherd or with a towel on my head. Surely, I just had to. We didn't, hadn't that many kids. And that's what we did, and it was always there's songs about the lowly shepherds, right? And by the way, shepherds were lowly, okay? They were the low job, and they gave that job to kids, a lot of kids, teenagers and kids, lower, and they gave it to girls. You very seldom hear of girl shepherds, but the girls were out there too, and but then they were lowly because it was a lowly job. All right, but that's not the story here. This is better. Okay, and it was already alluded to by JJ that these were special shepherds. These were specially trained temple shepherds. They probably were boys, but they especially trained because they guarded and took care of the lambs and maybe some other animals, but the lambs that were set apart to be sacrificed for the sins of Israel. And if you've studied sacrifices, they had to be perfect. Couldn't have a blind eye, couldn't have a cut toe, right? Couldn't have a scar, no scars, can't be sick. They had to be perfect for God, to give to God as a gift, because these are going to go to take away the sins of Israel at that time, the sacrifice. And of course, just for you all know, Jesus became that last sacrifice. And what was he? He was perfect. Perfect. He was in a body like ours, but he was able to somehow pull out obedience and perfection as a human being. Very special, isn't it? And so anyway, so there's the shepherds, right? And guess what they did? What their job was. Kathy, guess what they did? They had to protect the sheep. And it was dangerous out there. Now, it wasn't out there because they had a special place to keep these sheep, but still, it was dangerous, and they had to let them out of the pen sometimes. They'd lock them up at night, but out of the pen. And there was danger. There was rocks. There was animals. They could trip. They could fall. They could get hurt, okay? And so what they would do when the lambs were born, the little ones, they would take those, and here's where you get that word. They would take them, and they would swaddle them. They would wrap them up tight. Why? That way they couldn't get hurt. Another sheep couldn't stomp on it or kick it, or a wolf wouldn't, they watched the wolf, wouldn't go out and get lost and get hurt. So they swaddled them. So they couldn't run away. They were sort of just there, okay? So the shepherds knew that their job was to swaddle the lambs for sacrifice and protect them. So now you get the story. So there they are, minding their own business, right? Tending to the flocks by night. And the angel of the Lord appears, and you know that, and it said what? You'll find the babe swaddled, wrapped in swaddling clothes. They go, snap. I know who this is. We know who this is. This is someone set apart to be sacrificed, to take away the sins of the world. God has come down, and we are going to go find him, and we're going to find him wrapped in swaddling clothes, just like a sacrificed lamb. So there's a big theological statement there that they're getting that I didn't get for years, and maybe you've never heard it before either. So these are temple shepherds to be sacrificed, swaddling clothes, and now it gives us the idea that it's identity. To the shepherds, that's identity, right? It identifies who he is. Okay, so let's see what else I got here. Oh, well, he already mentioned the wise men or the magi. Most of us, if we have that little nativity scene, as I've mentioned before, we have the shepherds and the sheep, and then right there, the wise men are there too, they're kneeling down, you know. And in my Methodist church, it was always the older kids got to be the kings, and the scrawnier kids were the shepherds, because they're lowly and the kings are up there, you know. So they got to dress like kings, and each one brought a little thing, a little gift. We don't really know. We always used to sing "We Three Kings," but there would not have been three. There would have been a whole entourage. These are people like he mentioned. They traveled 1,000 miles to get there from when they saw the star. Well, it took a little while to get there, so they didn't arrive till Jesus was about 2 years old. Maybe 3, but 2. That's why Herod, they came and talked to Herod that a king has been born. That's why he didn't say, really, go kill all the babies. He said, go kill all the boys that are what? 2 and 3 years old. So, okay, it's okay. Again, just leave the wise men, the little plastic guys there for your little nativity. But now Jesus, if you'll read it, I think I read it, Kathy, and they said the wise men, magi, whatever you want to call them, went to a home. So Jesus was in a home by then, or Joseph and Mary had a home at 2 years old, or maybe 3. And then that comes out to kill boys that age, and it was perfect timing. Even though it took them a long time to get there, it was perfect timing, because all of a sudden they've got some gold and frankincense and myrrh, and they can afford to get out of town. And that's what they do. They get out of town, and they pay, that money pays for them to take the trip to Egypt and stay there and live on that. And probably they still had a lot left over, probably, because they were very rich. We always think they never had a thing. Right now they're enjoying some good food. You know? And so they go to Egypt and they stay there until that Herod dies and the next one comes along. And we already mentioned that. It kind of ruins the song, "He was born on a cold winter's night." Not really, but it's okay. We can still sing it. Because they didn't travel in the cold winter. They waited. It would have been fall, you know, autumn, fall. But they would travel to Bethlehem when the temperatures, everybody traveled when it was still nice outside. Okay? That's okay, though. We can sing "A Cold Winter's Night," but it's not really accurate. But that doesn't matter, does it? So that's some myth busting. So we've gone through St. Nicholas and got some truth on him. Then we busted a few myths that I don't know if it really matters. But to me, I just have a little bit different picture. It was a little more cold looking, you know, and I don't mean temperature-wise, but just the stone and the animals and laying him down in this cold stone manger as opposed to the warm little one with hay, right? I also think we ought to bust the myth that no crying he made. So I just don't see that, but that wouldn't make him very human, right? But okay, enough of that, right? I hope Bobby, I did okay. I didn't bust it up too bad. Now I'm really going to end this and just end it with some theology of Christmas that we don't get very often, but that others would understand, the Jewish people would understand. So I want to take us back to, I'm not going to read it, I'm just going to tell you the story that some of you already know. You already know the story of Jericho and the walls come down and all that. And so anyway, there's a woman that gets into the story, and her occupation isn't the greatest. She's a little bit outside the Jewish mind, but she's not a Jew. And she has a kind of an occupation. Her name was Rahab. And So we don't need to talk about her occupation. But she lived there, and the Hebrews, as you know, they're going to go in and take this land, so they send in spies, right? And all of a sudden, they realize, hey, there's spies in town. We better find them. We're going to kill them. And so they got to hide. And somehow they meet Rahab, and she says, I'll hide you. So she hid them, and they knock on the door. Who's there? Is anybody there? Have you seen a bunch of spies that are have curls and a black hat or something, or however they were dressed then? I don't think, no, that's later. That's now. Throw away that. That's just a myth. But the Jewish Hebrew spies. And she said, nope, haven't seen them, have no idea where they are. And so they leave, and she covers them up, and they leave, and then she pulls it back and says, okay, you can come out now. They're gone. And they say, okay, we're gonna try to sneak out of town. She says, here, sneak over the wall. She lived on the edge of the wall or something. And so if we went out the window, we'd say, go out this way, go down the wall, and you'll be able to escape. So, okay, thank you for hiding us. She said, oh, hold it, just a minute here. She said, just a minute here. I want to know something. I believe you are going to take this city. God is going to give you our city. And my neighbors and friends and those that hunted you down, they're probably all, not all, but they're going to either captured or die, but the city is going to be yours. So I want you to do something for me. He said, well, because I hid you and I saved your life, when you come back to take this city, I want you to save my family's life. Just me and my family. I want you to save their life. So they agree. And it's the scarlet cord. They hang the red cord out, and they tell the army, if you see a house on the wall with a red cord, don't destroy that one. That we have a covenant with, that because they saved our lives, now we're going to save their lives. And out of that comes the theology of Jesus, which it's not explained that way, but it's there. Because what it is where we miss it and where we fail in Christianity so miserably, even at Christmas time, but all year long, is not understanding the babe is born. Yes, he's born, though we know, to be a sacrifice. He's born to be the lamb that takes away the sins of the world. We don't normally talk about it at Christmas time. We talk about it at Easter time, but that's where he's headed. This beautiful baby is headed to be a sacrifice, just like those beautiful lambs. And he's swaddled. And what's going to happen is he's going to then do what? He's going to give his life to save your life. That's the theology we get. Salvation, saved by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ. And so but we don't understand the theology that was in there with Rahab. The picture that she gives is, once it started, then we realize this is Christianity. A life for a life. Not just one dies, but one then gives. So it's the theology of how it works is Jesus is going to die for you, and then you're going to turn around and give yourself, your life, back to him. He gave his life for you. Now you give your life to him. A life for a life. And Rahab demonstrates that so beautifully. A life for a life. I saved you. Let me have a life. So a life for a life. And that's really, the celebration is not just the niceness of the nativity and all the things and the gifts and all that, which is fun. It brings families together. It helps us try to get along and enjoy life a little bit more during this season. But don't forget, it's a picture that this babe is going to give his life. And if you're going to believe in him, then you need to follow the pattern of the Bible. And that is, he's going to give his life, or he gave his life, hopefully, for me. So I could give my life for him, to him. Understandably, how weak, just like St. Nicholas, it weakened through until it turned out to be Santa Claus. Christianity has been weakened because we're still getting him to give his life to us so that we can die and go to heaven and keep our life. Is that right? All over America, even this morning, that will be said. Maybe they'll tell the Christmas story, but at the end of the sermon, they're gonna say, now you come and you give your life to Jesus so that if you were to die today or tomorrow, you know you'd have a home in heaven. And all of a sudden, you're taking his life for you, but you're taking it for you. And you don't understand that's not how it works. Yeah, you die, you go to heaven, thank God for that. Thank God for that salvation, death. If you die today, you go to heaven. Thank God for that. But that's not the gospel. The gospel is a life for a life. So he said, okay, I get it. Jesus, you died for me so that I could give my life back to you. That's the living side of it. Yeah, heaven's great if you're dead, right? If you die and go to heaven, that's great. What happens if you wake up tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day and you got some great years ahead of you? What are you gonna do with those great years? You're gonna miss out on a lot of what God planned for you because you don't understand the value of what the theology of Christmas really is. A babe is gonna be born, and he's born to give his life. God comes down and dies to give his life so that you can live for him in his place, so to speak, while on earth. A life for a life. A beautiful story, but it's a complete story of the celebration of Christmas and understanding exactly what it is. Fades, can I get an A if I hit it, or can you do it? Okay. So when you do something like this, it's been such a great time together, and I didn't want to take a long time. So I'm gonna step out. I didn't want to, and then Fady, I was on the phone, and he really encouraged me. I didn't have time to practice. That means I'm gonna sing it a cappella, a song to close out the service. And you know, a cappella means I'm gonna sing it by myself. No help, I just get a note. That's it, in case you don't know. In fact, I haven't practiced it, so I had to do the lyrics too. Hang on. So we're gonna close out the service with this, and I hope today, as you reflect on that, you'll think, I really believe in Jesus, but I've never really given my gift of me. I let him die for me, and now I'm living a selfish life. Maybe you didn't understand it, but maybe this song will help you understand it. Okay. Sweet little Jesus boy, they made you be born in a manger. Sweet little holy child, I didn't know who you were. I didn't know you come to save me, Lord, to take my sins away. My eyes were blind. I could not see. I didn't know who you were. Long time ago, you were born in a manger low. Sweet little Jesus boy. The world treats you mean, Lord. Well, it treats me mean too. But that's how things are down here. We didn't know who you were. You have shown me how you've been trying, Master. You have shown me how, even when you were dying. Well, it just seems like I couldn't do right. Look how I treated you. But please, sir, forgive me, Lord. I didn't know it was you. Sweet little Jesus boy, born a long time ago. Sweet little holy child, I I didn't know who you were. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know it was you. But I know it's you right now. I know who you are right now.